Hi, I'm Clarissa Brind, Associate Advisor for Curriculum at CSC. In this recording, I will be presenting an introduction to curriculum design, and I'll be demonstrating how to use the design thinking model on the CSC curriculum website. But first, let's focus on curriculum design. Our objectives for this session are to understand and make sense of the following. What is curriculum? How is the curriculum experienced and represented in our schools? Progression through a 3 to 16 continuum of learning. Approaches to curriculum design. And selection and sequencing in curriculum design. First, as you're aware, there are a full suite of reforms in Wales at the moment. There's the establishment of the National Academy of Education Leadership, the new professional standards for teaching and leadership. Schools are to be reconceptualised as learning organisations. There's the reform of the initial teacher education provision. ALN reform, the ALN bill is now live. There's a new approach to professional learning. There's a big increase in school-to-school working, although may have been affected by COVID. There's a development of a new assessment and evaluation framework. And there is our curriculum for Wales. As you are aware, there is a curriculum for Wales, the Journey to Curriculum Rollout document. And this sits on Hub within Curriculum for Wales. This document replaces the Journey to 2022 and Renew and Reform, supporting learners' wellbeing and progression. The Journey to Curriculum Rollout guidance supports all schools with a common set of expectations, priorities, and support and information for curriculum design. Each phase of the journey has key areas of work that schools should be engaging with and a clear set of questions to prompt and guide discussion. Now may be a good time to reflect on your journey to 2022. You may like to refer to the document and consider these questions. What are your next steps? What are the barriers that may affect you moving forward? What support might you need? So what does curriculum mean to you? This picture has been taken from the Secondary Curriculum Design Handbook, and you may recognise lots of these elements in your school. Assemblies, work experience, extracurricular clubs, visits, trips, residentials, working with artists, STEM ambassadors, community projects, all separate jigsaw pieces combined together. You may have seen this image before, stuffing the bird, thinking of a content-driven curriculum. We have got to get it covered. We don't have time to spend on this. We need to move on. Let's keep stuffing the bird with more and more information. In the curriculum guidance, very clearly says that a school's curriculum is everything a learner experiences in pursuit of the 4 purposes. It is not simply what we teach, but how we teach, and crucially, why we teach it. This image is taken from the Curriculum for Wales poster pack, which is found on the CSC Knowledge Bank. As you can see from this diagram, the Statutory Curriculum for Wales framework sits at a level that is higher than our previous national curriculum. Within our framework, there are our 4 purposes. which underpins all our curricular decisions. There are the 6 areas of learning experience. There are the statements of what matters, descriptions of learning, and crucially, progression across them. Then we move to the school level curriculum. This is where our previous national curriculum existed. It's not being directly replaced by the framework, but by the curriculum that is to be developed and designed by schools and clusters. Once the school level curriculum has been designed, practitioners may begin to create their schemes of learning, their class, their short-term planning. Understanding this model is key to unlocking understanding of its component parts. Professor Mark Priestley has worked within the development of the curriculum for Wales. He has advised the Welsh Government in a number of areas. And in this video, he suggests some questions that we should be asking. Where do we start? What are the big ideas in curricular policy? What knowledge do our young people need to develop these big ideas? What are the appropriate methods? And what are the barriers and catalysts for change in our school? Now is a good time to pause this video and watch the Professor Mark Priestley video and spend some time discussing these questions. So what are the 3 main curriculum types? As you saw previously, a content curriculum. The specification of content to be taught is a starting point and making sure that no matter what, we cover all the content given. An outcome curriculum. The specification of outcomes to be achieved as a starting point. Lastly, process curriculum. The specification of long-term goals and educational purposes as a starting point. Content and methods are then selected if they are fit for purpose. Which type of curriculum is represented in the Curriculum for Wales framework? Let's consider. From 1988 to present, we were working with content and outcome curriculum, defined through specified content, skills, range and levels. GCSE specs were outlined content and outcomes. The foundation phase perhaps was the start of what we would say is a process model. Curriculum for Wales from 2022 onwards is a process curriculum, starting with the 4 purposes. They are at the heart of all our curricular decisions, our aspirations for our learners. It's a process model within the area of learning experiences, through the specification of big ideas, the key concepts that are the long-term and consistent goal of each AOLE to develop. There's greater flexibility over the content, decided by schools, by what is appropriate for learners, the methods, the pedagogy and approaches. The why is given. These are the aspirations, as mentioned previously, for all learners in our schools by the age of 16. We have to identify the what and the how. This is a suggested flow of the component parts. It is an example, not the definitive way. At the very top of this framework model, there are the 4 purposes, the philosophy, and the underpinning principles of the curriculum framework. Flows into the principles of progression. These are broad and apply to all areas of learning. Flows to the 6 areas of learning and experience. Within each of these AOLEs, there are the 4 purposes, and how each of the AOLE addresses these 4 purposes can be clearly seen within the documents on Hub. Each AOLE has their own statements of what matters, the key concepts, the big picture. Within each of the statements of what matters, there are the descriptions of learning, progression steps to ensure the learning continuum, the principles of progression, AOLE specific considerations to support progression. And there are also the cross-curricular skills, the cross-cutting themes, the mandatory curriculum elements, all of which are to be embedded within each area of learning experience. It is important that we develop a shared understanding of progression. As in the quote, this means considering what broad progression should look like for learners across the 3 to 16 continuum within the areas, the statements of what matters, and the associated disciplines. CSE have produced an assessment poster pack that has clarified the key messages about assessment and the fundamental role that assessment plays to ensure progression for all learners. There are 5 principles of progression, and they underpin progression across all the AOLEs. The principles are increasing breadth and depth of knowledge, deepening understanding of the ideas and disciplines within the areas, refinement and growing sophistication, making connections and transferring learning into new contexts. Finally, increasing effectiveness. It's important that we understand these principles and recognise what they look like across the AOLEs. Maths and numeracy has 5 connected and independent proficiencies, and it's crucial that we consider these when designing our school's curriculum to ensure the progression of all our learners. The principles for designing your curriculum can be found within Hub. It may be a good time now to pause this video and to consider these questions. When we're thinking about progression, how do we expect learners to progress? What do we teach and why? What should progress in learning look like? How do we use assessment to ensure all our learners make progress? Once schools have determined the why, informed by the 4 purposes, we then must consider the what. The what that needs to be taught, the specific knowledge, skills and experiences. Then we need to consider what order, i.e. sequencing our curriculum. Only when we have done this can we consider how we are going to do this, such as the pedagogy that we're going to use, the themes, contexts that will bring the learning to life. This is your medium short-term class level planning. But what do we mean by knowledge, skills and experiences? These have been defined very clearly in the curriculum guidance, and it says that experience is the combination of knowledge and skills in a learning environment to further progress learners towards curriculum purposes. What are skills? Skills are the ability to undertake activities that require application of knowledge, increasing in expertise and competence. And finally, knowledge, the acquisition of facts, information and skills through experience or education, theoretical or a practical understanding of a discipline. They are not standalone. They are very dependent on each other And it's important that we consider the experience, the skills, and the knowledge that our learners need to enable them to progress across the learning continuum. A key principle of curriculum design is coherence, making explicit connections and links between the different subjects and experiences encountered. These connections are vital to ensure a curriculum is purposeful and meaningful. How these connections are made is up to individual schools as they design their own curriculum. Within the Principles of Curriculum Design section on Hub, it clearly states that we need to ensure breadth and depth of learning, drawing together a range of experiences, knowledge, and skills across a range of contexts, topics, and activities, making links across these areas. We also need to provide for, over time, an increase in depth and sophistication of learning. Here are some questions to help you consider the breadth and depth of your curriculum. Are authentic links made across the disciplines, across the subjects? And if there are links made, how are these links identified? Does the curriculum bring together a broad range of experiences, knowledge and skills through the context, the topics, the different themes that we may have? Within depth, how does our curriculum enable our learners to engage in increasing depth and sophistication? Are there opportunities for learners to apply their learning in increasingly challenging contexts? It may be a good time for you to pause this video and to consider the breadth and depth of your current curriculum. In Journey to Curriculum Rollout, it says, schools should co-construct a high-level curriculum model that considers a range of approaches, e.g. disciplinary, interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary, to curriculum design, and how the approaches can support progression, ensuring that all our learners are continuing to move along our learning continuum. So what approaches are there? We've identified 3 curriculum approaches here: disciplinary, interdisciplinary, and multidisciplinary. Disciplinary is when learning and teaching is within single disciplines. Interdisciplinary, learning and teaching combines 2 or more disciplines into a holistic approach. When considering multidisciplinary, learning and teaching within disciplines that are linked to a common theme. Whilst the curriculum encourages links, connections and cross-curricular planning, there is not one defined or expected way of delivering this through a particular design approach. Indeed, the guidance is clear on the value and place of disciplines, especially as learners progress and specialise. The framework does not require settings and schools to develop a timetable explicitly structured along the lines of the areas, or to organise the setting or school or staffing on that basis. This is explicitly stated in the introduction to the guidance. We are now going to have a look at the Curriculum for Wales website within the CSC website. Within this website, there is the design thinking model. Design thinking is an approach used for practical problem solving. And we have applied the design thinking model to support curriculum design. Take a look at the website here. As you can see, the phases of the journey to 2022 have been aligned to the design thinking model. Engagement, design planning and trialling, evaluation and preparing, first teaching. Underneath you can see that there are the different sections of the design thinking model. If you go to Design Thinking Overview, You will then see a clearer image of this model, and underneath each of the different elements of the model, there is an overview of what is covered. Within empathise, conducting research to develop a deeper understanding. Within define, ideate, prototype, test, and implement. Within each of these phases, there is very clear guidance as to what you as a school can be engaging in. Let's look at empathise. Empathise is the stage where you conduct research to develop an understanding of your users. But what does this mean for curriculum design? Here, this is broken down for you, so you can see what this means for you in your school. Within the empathise stage, it means understanding your learners, your context, your wider community, your current curricular offer, the what, the why, the how, understanding the staff knowledge, motivation, and also the framework. It's important here as well that you recognise that there are some key questions taken directly from the journey to curriculum rollout. Also, very clearly, all links to the professional learning that is available within CSC has been included. By clicking directly on these links, you can access the professional learning that has been signposted to enable you to engage effectively with this phase. Moving on, looking at the ideate stage. This is a stage which brings teams together to generate the ideas and build on others' ideas, attempting to address the needs of your stakeholders. But what does this mean for curriculum design? Starts with questions, not answers. How should we teach and why? How will this support our learners? Establishing the design principles. Sharing and developing the understanding of progression across school and across a cluster of schools. Considering that importance of coherence within learner progression and making connections within and across areas. Again, there are direct links to the journey to curriculum rollout. What does it say that schools should do? The key questions from the journey to curriculum rollout to support the next steps. And all the professional learning is signposted that is available to support you as a school during this phase. You may now want to take a couple of minutes to consider where you are as a school. Familiarise yourself with the design thinking model on the CSC curriculum website. Navigate around the different sections. Which of the activities in the table have you as a school already done? Which do you feel secure with? Which may need revisiting? As you can see from the diagram, this design thinking model is not moving from one end to the other. It very much revisits and moves backwards to enable you to then move forward. It's underpinned by learner and stakeholder engagement. You may develop some ideas within your curriculum and assessment design within the ideate stage. You may then put together a prototype, trial some aspects. You may use an inquiry approach. You'll be testing those then, implementing. But you'll be certain to review and reflect and revise, and may move back along the design thinking model to then allow you to move forward. We're now going to have a look at identifying strands of progression across the descriptions of learning that you may use to help structure your school level curriculum. As you can see in the screenshot, this is taken from the expressive arts area of learning experience, looking within the first what matters statement. Progression step 1, 2 and 3 is clearly displayed, but with the toggle you can easily move to progression step 4 and 5. As you are aware, at the end of progression step 1, this aligns to 3 years of learning. These descriptions of learning describe the learning within each of these progressive steps. Micro steps are needed within these descriptions of learning to transition from progressive step 1 to progression step 2. From the very beginning, from novice to progression step 1, to 2, to 3, to 4, to 5, the expert. Schools need to break down and articulate these micro steps in learning. From this, schools and practitioners can then plan their medium-term and short-term planning. What are the themes then, as schools, that you will use to bring this learning to life? Within the assessment guidance, within the curriculum framework, it very clearly says that descriptions of learning are not statements that can be ticked off or standalone activities. It is clear to see from this diagram that there are strands of progression within the descriptions of learning that can be drawn out, and progression can be planned against. Here is an example, a concrete example, to show what this may look like, using the descriptions of learning as previously shared. There is no context here. It is important that schools do this for their own context. But what has been put together is the strand of progression, as identified in the previous slide. Steps of learning from novice to mastery that are separate from themes and context that then bring the learning to life. These steps of learning have been identified and written within this document. It's important to recognise that progression is not linear. Hence why, at the top of this diagram, you can see the arrows are revisiting, are returning, and are enabling the movement through the learning continuum. Within the progression steps at the top, they have been labelled with year groups just to help thinking. But actually, this is an area that can be developed, and these year groups may not need to be there. They are just there to help you recognise how the learner needs to move forward in their learning. It's important that we understand where they are now, where they need to go to next, and how they will get there. It may be a good time to pause this video and to discuss this further in your school. Have a look at the expressive arts area of learning experience on Hub. Look at the strands of progression. How would you break these down to show progression within a 3-year progression step? What would this look like for your learners in your school? For further information to support you as you design your school curriculum, please visit the Curriculum for Wales area within the CSC website. Here you will find links to all the professional and opportunities, resources, research and the latest up-to-date information. There are regular Curriculum for Wales newsletters. Each month there will be a new issue. It will contain all links to professional learning, and it will also include latest releases and updates. Links to these are sent through the school bulletin, and they can also all be found in the Knowledge Bank on the CSC website. As mentioned earlier, in the suite of reforms, there is the National Professional Learning Programme. This can all be found on the Knowledge Bank. There are many professional learning, networking and collaboration opportunities that can also be found within the Central South Wales Challenge on the CSC website. This is a live document that is updated, so please take time to look at this on the Knowledge Bank and see if you are able to engage in any of these opportunities. There is a Curriculum for Wales community area. Please join. There are many links to this through the school bulletins and on the CSC website. In the community area, there will be latest updates, latest releases, and there are files within this community area for you to access the relevant information. There are also files organised into the AOLEs with specific resources and materials to support you as you develop your curriculum design journey. There is always bespoke support through a brokerage process through which your improvement partner will be able to support you. Hope you have found this presentation useful today. Please contact us if we are able to support you in any other way.